I first saw Maggie Smith on stage in the late 70s, back when I was just a young usher at the Oxford Playhouse. I didn't know much about the world of theater then, but I knew her name. Everyone did. Maggie had this way about her, a presence that made you sit up a little straighter in your seat, hold your breath a little longer. It wasn't just that she was famous. There was something magnetic about her, something you felt even before the lights dimmed. I remember standing in the wings, watching her from the shadows. She always came in quietly. No grand entrance, no need for attention off stage. She saved all of that for the performance. Watching her work was like watching someone craft something intricate, something only she could see until, suddenly, it was there for all of us to behold. She had this remarkable ability to shapeshift. One moment, she was a sharp-tongued matriarch, commanding the stage with her fierce wit, and the next, she'd be a vulnerable widow, heartbreak written in her eyes. I never spoke to her, never had the nerve to approach her, but I got to know her in the way one does when watching from the edges. I saw her dedication, her focus. She was demanding, but only of herself, it seemed. Even when she rehearsed, it was like she was already performing, every line delivered with the same intensity and precision as opening night. Years passed, and I moved on from the theater, but I never stopped following her career. Every time she took on a new role, whether on stage or screen, I was there watching from a distance. It felt like I had a small stake in her success, even though she'd never have remembered me. After all, I had been there during those nights at the Playhouse when she left audiences spellbound. I'd seen the early glimpses of the greatness everyone else would later talk about. Maggie didn't just perform, she transformed. She had this way of disappearing into her characters so completely that you forgot she was acting. Her performances in the classics, Shakespeare, Ibsen, Chekhov, they were something else entirely. And then, there were the films. The prime of Miss John Brodie, for which she won her first Oscar. I still remember the thrill I felt when I heard the news. I had watched her give everything to that role on stage, and to see her brilliance recognized on that level, it felt like a victory for all of us who'd witnessed her magic up close. And then there was Downton Abbey, which introduced her to an entirely new generation. I couldn't help but smile, watching young people talk about her sharp wit and impeccable timing as the Dowager Countess. I always known she had that in her. She could make an audience weep one minute and have them in stitches the next. But it wasn't just the accolades. The Oscars, the BAFTAs, the countless awards she gathered along the way. That made her special. It was the way she elevated everything she touched. You could feel it, even from the back row of the theater. Maggie Smith had this rare ability to command respect, to hold an entire room captive with just a look, a pause, a whisper. She made the audience feel something deep, something real. I'll never forget how she fought her way back to the stage and screen after her cancer diagnosis. It was 2007, I think, when I read about it. She'd been diagnosed with breast cancer, and I feared it might take away that fire of hers, that indomitable spirit that had defined so many of her roles. But she came back. Of course she did. By the time she appeared in the final Harry Potter films, you could see the strength and resilience that had carried her through, not just in her life, but in her performances. I wasn't surprised. Maggie never seemed fragile to me. There was always something unbreakable beneath that elegance. Even after I left the theater, even as my life took me far from those old Playhouse days, I kept a close eye on her work. And every time I saw her on screen, I'd tell people, I was there. I used to watch her from the wings. It felt like a privilege to have witnessed the beginnings of her legendary career, to have been there, even if only as a shadow on the edge of the stage. When I heard she'd passed, it hit me harder than I expected. She was 89 nearly. I knew the time would come, but still, it felt like a great light had gone out. She wasn't just a legend. She was a part of the fabric of theater itself, woven into the very history of British acting. And she never stopped giving. Right up until the end, she was supporting charities, lending her name to causes, raising money to rebuild theaters in Christchurch, to raise awareness for glaucoma, to help her fellow actors who had fallen on hard times. She never forgot where she came from. I'll miss her. I'll miss the thought that somewhere out there Maggie Smith is still creating, still surprising us with something new. She gave us so much, more than we probably deserved. She reminded us what acting could be: powerful, transformative, human. And though I only knew her from a distance, from my spot at the side of the stage, I'll always feel a connection to her. Here's to you, Maggie, the woman who made the world hold its breath. You were one of a kind, and we were lucky to have you.